only person I have to do anything for now is myself.
Well, yes, and I think part of what I really got from that was, so I really believe that the quality of our lives is based on the quality of our relationships, and how
Mhm.
beautifully you alluded to the first relationship has to be of you with you. And if I could have changed, I think one tiny thing looking back, it would have been to improve that relationship with me, within me, before I could affect the relationships outside. Because otherwise you're constantly putting out fires.
Mhm.
You're not really building anything, you're just troubleshooting. Because there isn't the capacity within to look. And I think that part of that journey was so important, of being able to go back and reframe certain experiences. And my belief system is that life happens for me and through me, not to me.
Right.
And once that really came in, that shift in lens, then it's challenging. And it doesn't mean that things weren't challenging, they were, but there was just a different perspective to be able to look at it from. Like, if life is happy, if I believe that life is happening for me and through me, where's the gift here? Where's the wisdom? Where's the skill set? And if I could elicit those, and it could take months to be able to elicit that at times, then I was that 2 millimeter further down the line.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self-leadership, leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your host, Andy McDowell. It's time of this recording. It's early February. Being in North America, when we think of February, what do we think of? We think of cold. We think of snow. We think of wind. We think of get me out of here, right? We think about it's vacation time. Gotta get out of this stuff. So today we're going to take a 45-minute or so vacation for us here in North America. I'm in Atlanta. It's cold, but if you're talking to somebody in Minneapolis, it's like, you guys are pathetic. You don't have cold. We've got cold, right? It's like, oh, that's not a knife. This is a knife, kind of conversation. But no matter where you are in North America, unless you're in Southern Cal, Florida, or Arizona, we're going to go on a vacation, and we're going to go on a vacation to the very eastern side of the Caribbean. Now, why do I say that? I say that because our guest today resides in the island of Antigua. And for those that are geographically challenged, Antigua is at the very northern end of that eastern chain of islands that run north-south in the Caribbean. With Grenada and Barbados on the south end, Antigua is at the very northern end of that eastern arc of the islands. So my guest today is Ronita Godsi, and it's not only amazing she lives in Antigua, but her life story is amazing. Now, a little side note, I knew her life story ahead of time because she has 4 daughters, and one of her daughters has been a guest of mine back in 2022 on this podcast. Talia Jacqueline who, if you have not listened to that episode, you've got to go and listen to that episode. It's an amazing episode. It lives out in Austin, Texas. One of my favorites out there in the world. Talia is, for what she does and who she is in this world. So I really, if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to that episode. But Ronita is Talia's mother. And so in that episode, you got to hear part of Ronita's life story when Talia was talking about her life story. But I'm going to read her bio. After I finish reading the bio, it's a little lengthy. I want to read the whole bio. Sometimes I chop them in half or whatever. I want to read you the whole bio today because it's just chock full of wows. This is a chock full of wows when you hear this. And I want you to feel the full breadth of Ronita's life story. We're going to give her an opportunity to fill in the gaps and so forth like we usually do. But let me read you Ronita's bio. Her bio reads, an adventurous and resilient soul. And I'm going to pause here for a second because when we're done with our conversation today, those two words, adventurous and resilient, are just going to pop out from our conversation. Ronita was born in Nigeria, raised in London, and now feels blessed to call Antigua home. Having escaped a toxic marriage, she struggled and embraced single motherhood with her 4 incredible daughters in Los Angeles. So you got that right. Nigeria, London, Los Angeles, learning profound lessons in love and humility. Having worked in diverse retail sectors and online platforms, she uncovered her passion for coaching and mentoring. With her innate ability to perceive the unspoken, she assists others in unraveling their stories, gaining profound awareness, and reconnecting them with their inner wisdom. Once her youngest daughter left for college, she embarked on an island-hopping adventure that eventually brought her to the healing shores of Antigua. And we're going to get into that. Inspired by her transformative experience, she created the Master the 8 experience, a bespoke coaching journey that invites individuals to pause, reflect, and thrive against the enchanting backdrop of the island. When she's not coaching, you'll find her on the tennis court, immersing herself in languages, exploring cultures, and savoring delectable cuisines. Her vision extends to living and working across 40-plus islands, uplifting others and leaving a trail of happiness and inspiration, echoing the timeless words of Mother Teresa. So with that being said, Ronita, welcome to the podcast. I can't thank you enough for taking that valuable, non-infinite resource in your life called time to come spend it with us and talk about your life story and what you do and all those things like that.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.
So, as I like to do in the beginning, as listening audience has heard me say over and over again, I love storytelling. So we've heard quite a bit about your life story in the bio, but why don't you take 5-10 minutes or so, pick a spot in your timeline of your life and take us from there to where you are today.
Sure. I think the one that comes to mind right now is a sense of hope, because I remember in LA when things were at a very, very dark place, that if you had told me, I didn't even know about coaching at that point, didn't even know what it was. But if you had told me that there were certain things I could do and I would end up living on an island feeling happy 85% of the time, I don't think I could have wrapped my mind around it. But I think it's Jack Canfield talks about when you can drive from LA to New York at night and all you ever see is 200 feet ahead of you with a headlight. And that was really, I think when I look back on my life, that's how it played out. Just, I could only see the next step in front of me. And sometimes even that was insurmountable. But as long as I just took a tiny step, So early on, I made a deal with myself that there were some days that all I would require of myself was 2 millimeters. If I could just do 2 millimeters that day, that was a blessed day. And that just expanded and expanded. And I'm incredibly grateful to be where I am now, living life on these terms, because I don't think they were conceivable before. So a lot of life lessons learnt along the way.
So I would have to imagine trying to raise four daughters on your own, that you were very much in survival mode, and where that seeing only 200 feet or 200 meters in front of you comes from, that mindset
Yeah.
or attitude or that place of, I've got a lot on my shoulders. I really didn't expect to be here at this place in my life if you asked me 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the best that I can ask of myself, given this situation, is just to get through the day.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, those girls were they were really my lifeline, because if it wasn't for them, I could have easily just checked out. It at times that pain was so intense, but these four amazing girls that I felt responsible for were my impetus to get out.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I was in survival. Yes, it was really, really challenging. I had, with no judgment on it, but I had very much a victim mentality. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't understand why things were happening. People pleaser, that whole dynamic of codependency and being with someone that had narcissistic tendencies, plus a whole lot of other things I had no idea about. So it's been a journey of understanding what's made me who I was then,
Mm-hmm.
and what I needed to do to become something different, to experience something different. So yes, absolutely survival.
So, um, where were the four daughters born? Were they born all four in LA or back in London or?
Well, they were all born in LA, for different reasons. Couldn't leave the country, so they all raised there. I think my youngest was 3 when I finally got out.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in LA. I was in LA for 30 years, I think. That was very much home. And my mum, who lived in London, God bless her, would help with rent and food when needed. It was it was a challenging time.
Did you ever find an opportunity to have some alone time,
No,
some me
no,
time?
no. No, I think I was holding down 4 or 5 jobs at different times. Raising the 4 girls on my own, there was no other help coming in. There was no. I remember when I first came to the island, when I first got to Antigua, and I remember waking up the next morning, and my first thought was, "Okay, who needs what? What do I need to do?" And there was like, there's nobody here. And it took me a week to understand that I didn't have to do anything, that I didn't have to prep anything, didn't have to take anyone anywhere. I could just be and breathe. And it was so foreign to me that and now definitely working with clients, creating that time for them to replenish is absolutely crucial.
Yeah,
I think if
so I use the words in my coaching. Well, let's take a distinguishment here for our listening audience. So, my coaching is centers around leadership, and it's about how leadership is the essence of your self leadership. And for you, you take that same ilk, but you do it from a relationship perspective. So, quantity and quality of relationship in your life is represented by how well you have a relationship with yourself.
right, so I
And it's
truly
almost a
believe
self relationship, if you will. Use the same
absolutely
terminology as self leadership from that perspective. So,
Yeah.
in my coaching, I use the words be and do. You can go to my website and it's all over there. Asking the question: Are you a human doing or a human being? And so your time in LA was a ton of doing because you were in survival mode, and it's like, how do I raise these four daughters, put a
Mhm.
roof over her head, food on her table every single day? And you can imagine how many days it is. Pull out your calculator and look at 365 times X number of years. You said your youngest was 3, right?
Yes.
When you got out of the marriage,
Yes.
right? So that's at least 15, if not longer, times 365 that you're responsible of do, putting
Yes.
food on the table and roof over their heads. I can only imagine that transition when you got to Antigua and to the islands. Just like you said, I've been in do mode for so many flippin' days in my life, and now all of a sudden you're thrust into an atmosphere and an environment where the only person I have to do anything for now is myself.
Well, yes, and I think part of what I really got from that was, so I really believe that the quality of our lives is based on the quality of our relationships, and how
Mm-hmm.
beautifully you alluded to the first relationship has to be of you with you. And if I could have changed, I think one tiny thing looking back, it would have been to improve that relationship with me, within me, before I could affect the relationships outside. Because otherwise, you're constantly putting out fires.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really building anything. You're just troubleshooting, because there isn't the capacity within to look. And I think that part of that journey was so important, of being able to go back and reframe certain experiences. And my belief system is that life happens for me and through me, not to me.
Right.
And once that really came in, that shift in lens, then it's challenging. And it doesn't mean that things weren't challenging, they were, but there was just a different perspective to be able to look at it from. Like, if life is happy, if I believe that life is happening for me and through me, where's the gift here? Where's the wisdom? Where's the skill set? And if I could elicit those, and it could take months to be able to elicit that at times, then I was that 2 millimeter further down the line.
So, did that come gradually for you, or was it like an instant switch? For me, I had a
Mm,
major event.
mm,
I had been married twice, divorced twice. After the first marriage and divorce, I found myself who had a model of parents that were married for 61 years before we lost my mom. That was my model. And so to find myself after 7+ years of marriage in the ditch with a divorce, I'm like, is this all life has to offer? There's got to be something better than this. And how do I get myself to a better place in my life? And that started my self relationship journey to try and figure out, okay, what did I bring to the table in that relationship? And therefore, that's what I need to focus on and go work on. And went to therapy and did other things uh, to heal from childhood wounds as well as the wounds of the marriage. Um, so I don't know if I can call that an immediate trigger or switch, but was sort of a kick in the pants per se for me to go figure out things. So for you, was it
oh my
kind of like
gosh, yeah.
that experience, or was it just sort of kind of gradually after spending life in Antigua?
it
Uh,
was it was a it was a very particular night, that certain information came out that was just devastating. And I wanted to just call it a day. I didn't know how to, I just didn't know how to move forward.
mhm.
And I don't quite remember what, I just remember like this little voice inside just saying, pick up your computer and search. I don't even remember what I searched for, but I remember it was too late in at night. I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. It was too late to call my sister in LA, too early to call my mom in London. So I searched for something on that computer, and by the grace of God, Tony Robbins came up,
Mm.
and he had this program. I remember I had $34 in my account, and the program was $30 for the shipping, and you could have it for 30 days, and if not, it was like $1,000, and I think it was the ultimate something. And it was just desperation. I didn't know what else to do, so I spent that $30, and forever grateful to him that the minute I paid that, there were 2 hour recordings that I literally played on loop just to get me to daylight, and then did the program and just submerged myself into this world of coaching that I didn't know existed. And wasn't really, I mean, it was Tony Robbins, it was Esther Hicks, a lot of Esther Hicks stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then my eldest daughter, a year later, coming to me and just saying, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're different." And that was the first time I lifted my head and thought, wow, something's changing here. And just a lifelong learner anyway, but that absolutely became a calling for me of, heal what's within, so that hopefully through whatever pain that was, there's a way to uplift somebody else that may be going through something similar.
Yeah. So, how much do you feel like coaching is your why in life, and how much do you feel like it's you kind of paying forward what had happened to you?
Both of those, 100%. I sit in front of people, and you can see when something shifts. That it's like dominoes in their mind. You can just
Mm-hmm.
see their mind reframing things. And I sit there, and it is a privilege to. I can look back on all of that stuff and truly. Do I want to relive any of it? Absolutely not. But I am truly grateful for the gifts that it's given me to be able to touch that life in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Gives it purpose.
Yeah. So our journeys were slightly different, but we came out
Yes.
in the same spot in the journey. For me, it's been a self-esteem journey my whole life. It was my time with an executive coach who uh, started putting me on the right journey, just like Tony did for you. And for me, it's the same thing. It's part
Yeah.
paying it forward for the blessings that I got from the coaching that I received,
Yeah.
as well as if you look at spirit, mind, body for myself, through all of my discovery, looking at different structures, whether it be astrology and other things, I'm kind of built for it.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said, because I think it's so key. Like when you had that divorce, and there was that moment of like, is this all life is? But the wisdom and the understanding that the only thing that you can change is internally,
Mm-hmm.
and go back and heal those childhood wounds that have just been replicated until we're ready to heal. And I think that is, it's a journey that is really not for the faint of heart. It
No, it's
is,
not. It's
but
not. But it's what helps me to be an effective coach for others, because I have been
correct,
on
correct.
that journey, and to me, it's the pure essence and foundation of self leadership. Is to be able to sit down and ask yourself, uh, what do I want? I've been granted this huge blessing of a human life.
Mm,
And what do I want?
right,
And I don't know that I could have answered that question at that exact moment in time, but I could tell you what I didn't want,
right, which is
right? I
perfect.
know what I don't want. I don't
Right, right,
know if I necessarily know what I want now, but I've got time to figure that out. What's more important is I start that journey,
yeah,
that I start being
I,
intentional with my life, to start creating a life that I want for myself. I'm responsible for that.
right,
And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen because, the guy you see in the mirror, taking some
Absolutely.
steps and some actions in an intentional way to
Mm,
make that happen for myself.
absolutely. And I think you've kind of said it in that sentence of, yes, what do I want? Which I think a lot of people, especially the people pleasers, have no clue, because we're just so not used to it. It's almost wrong to look inside and ask that question. But I think once you've started understanding what do I really want, who do I need to become,
Mm-hmm.
that that next step is really allows a lot of growth and a lot of expansion and a lot of joy. You kind of grow your container so that you can experience more joy and more happiness and more loving connections with other people.
Yeah, and I think the starting point is not only that mindset change in an understanding that life works for you, as you said earlier in our conversation, but starts from a self worth standpoint. So even before you can get to the self esteem piece, you've got to get to the self worth piece to say, I'm worthy of a great life. It's kind of my right to have a great life, just
Yes, and
by the nature that I'm a human being with a soul and a spirit. Um,
yes, I agree with you, and I think it goes a little deeper because I think there's, looking back and finding compassion for ourselves and
mhm.
forgiving ourselves and the other players that were involved in whatever the incident was in childhood. Usually, you that's it's almost like a prerequisite
Hmm.
to feel the self, because otherwise we're holding on to stuff that, yes, served us then in our child's mind, doesn't serve us so well now. So, learning to forgive and have empathy and compassion, because we didn't know all the other bits of the puzzle of what was going on in life. We only saw it from our child's perspective, which is very egocentric, and everything evolves around, like, if mum or dad are upset, it's something that I, as the child, has done. So that self-esteem, you have to kind of go through the back door and look at the situation, reframe it, love on it in a way, and forgive all the people, especially yourself in it.
Yeah, so I start talking to clients about behaviors, one of my favorite topics of conversation is the battle between love and fear in a person's life. So, one of my favorite questions to ask of them when we're talking about a specific behavior in their life is to say, okay, what is that behavior feeding? And the answer is one of those two.
Yeah.
Is it love or fear? Are you doing that behavior because what you're feeding is the fear that you have inside because of an unhealed trauma or
Mm,
something that in your efforts to try and control it or deal
right.
with it, you've got this certain kind of behavior which then feeds the fear.
Right.
And so, how do we flip it so that you start having um, words to yourself and external behaviors that you're doing that's feeding love,
Right. Right.
love of self and love for others in your life, as opposed to, well, I'm doing this behavior because I'm feeding a fear.
Well, I think that whether it's fear or love, I think it's brilliant for them to start looking at. And then there's that whole thing about secondary gain.
Hmm.
We never do things unless we are getting a secondary gain from it.
Right.
So it may be an unhealthy gain. So that fear may be, re-imprinting that thought that I don't deserve, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not X enough. So it reinforces that. But there's a secondary gain. It's an unhealthy form of love, but it's a
Hmm.
form of love that we are perhaps, conditioned for when we were little. So I think it's understanding like what is that secondary gain, and understanding ourselves better, and then finding those healthier ways so that you can choose something that gives you love as opposed to the fear.
But I think that's why self worth is such an important and foundational element, because
Yes.
it's that it gives us clues as to where it is that you're feeding in your behaviors and so forth. And we've got to get that corrected first. It's such a
Mhm.
foundational element before we start looking at things that are going to sit on top of that
Yes.
as a foundation. What have you found to be the number one problem people have in relationships? I mean, we've covered the topic that it's
Yeah.
really a reflection of what's going on inside, but uh, in relationships, where are the common problems?
I think the biggest ones are self forgiveness, because if you can't, if you're not able to look back at yourself and feel compassion and empathy without judgment, we all
Hmm.
do truly do the best that we can do at the time. Is it ideal? Not at all. Do people get hurt? Yes, they do, but it's not intentional. So I think that's the core part, because you anything else is just surface. Whatever's coming to you from the other person, whether it's a parent with a child, whether it's an intimate partner, whether it's a business partner that you're working with, whatever is upsetting you, like you said, is a reflection of something that's inside of me. So where I need to look is inside of me, and start unpacking that and forgiving it and releasing it, so that there's room to allow something else in. Like almost like emptying out that cup full of water,
Hmm.
so that there's room to have a bit more empathy now, and a bit more understanding for what the other person in that relationship's perspective really is, and what are they really trying to say, not what I think they're saying or what I'm projecting onto them, but what are they really trying to say.
Yeah, one of the difficult things for me that I had to get through working with a therapist after that first marriage. A lot of my traumas was in my relationship with my father, and I had to do self forgiveness, like you said, but I also had to do forgiveness with my father,
Mhm.
to say, because we have a tendency with our parents to think that they're perfect. Where
Mhm.
they're the parents, so our hope at the very least is that our parents are perfect, that they're our guides, they're teaching us and so forth, that in obeying their commands or directions when we're young and everything, that they should know everything and do everything perfect. And the reality is, nothing can be further from the truth. They're human beings with their own flaws and their own traumas, and
Right.
uh, they may have done the internal work to heal those and be at a better place in the relationship with their kids, or they may not have.
Mhm.
And they may be projecting things on to you based off of their unhealed traumas. And so you have to have that compassion and empathy and forgiveness for the parent
Yes.
in that, before you can truly heal the trauma.
Yeah. Definitely. And I want to make sure that it's not, it's not all roses and flowers afterwards. Life still
No.
happens, but you develop better tools to cope with
Mm-hmm.
it. And I find that I definitely don't stay down as long. I don't go as deep as long, and it's
Yep.
easier to clean up. It's like if the certain relationships, things will be said or misinterpreted, to be able to have the capacity to go back after and say, you know what, it didn't quite go how I intended it. What I really wanted to say was, and please explain to me again. I can hear you now. I've got enough space inside of me to hear you. And I think, touching on that, the other thing that I think has become really apparent and really important is that our capacity to sit with our own discomfort whether we are remembering something from the past or something that's happening now, but be able to sit with that discomfort and
Mm-hmm.
not numb it, whether it's with alcohol, with food, with digital distractions or anything else. That having broadening that capacity to sit with your own discomfort allows you then more grace to sit with other people's discomfort. And I think that's a really important part of it, especially in relationships.
Yeah, and I often take that same tact with my clients in terms of particularly talking about fears.
Mm,
You've got to get to a point with your fears that you can almost, if you draw this picture, you're going to sit on a park bench with it and say, and acknowledge that it's sitting right next to you, and not that it's necessarily your best friend, but it's an acquaintance that you know,
mm,
and you know something about it, and you're going to sit there and acknowledge that the fear is sitting there and be present in the moment with a
mm.
fear and say, okay, what is driving this fear?
Right.
And like you
I think
said, as you do more and more of that, you get more and more comfortable with it. You recognize it quicker, your
yes.
response is quicker to it, and your behaviors are much different.
Right. Right. And then going back to you, both of us were saying about life happening for me. That if the fear is there, what's the message that it's trying to
Mm-hmm.
give me? And it's almost it's I really believe in parts integration. That we become very skilled at like chopping off and numbing and compartmentalizing parts of ourselves that we don't like. But until you can reintegrate all of those back into us and
Mm-hmm.
understand that each part of that it just has a message to give us, whether it's to keep us safe or to warn us from this or to it has a message. And I think when you can sit down with that discomfort, with that fear or with that anxiety and get curious and ask, what is it that you need me to know, then there's that befriending of the parts of ourselves and then we become more whole.
Yeah. I'm sure you get the same. I hate to use the word satisfaction, but you get the same feelings inside when you watch somebody go through that process to be in an emotionally safe place and to explore those things and figure out what is driving the behaviors and where the compassion for self needs to be, and to go through that hard work. It's hard.
It is hard,
You
but
know,
then
it's like it's hard. It's the kind of hard of standing in front of the mirror naked. Kind of hard where you're
yeah,
looking at the self. You're looking at the self, going, "Yikes!" Kind of thing. And it's like you being able to sit there for a while, staring at yourself, and eventually have that compassion and an empathy, and say, "It's okay. It's all right where I'm at. Life is a journey, and it's okay to be where I'm at right now. It's not kind of the final product per se, but it's a life journey of growth and self forgiveness and self leadership to go after what you want in life. And if you don't like what you see, okay, what's the game plan?
right.
I learned a math equation in my career at Boeing very early on in my leadership of S plus R equals O. What's your situation? What's your response to get the outcome that you're looking for? And I use that quite a bit with my teams to say,
Mm.
okay, where are we at? What's our S? And there were some people on my team that like to talk about the S a lot, the whiners. S, 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 S. And I have to stop the meeting, with a technical sign and go, get off your S. Everybody knows what the S is. We've been talking about it for 15 minutes. It's time to stop whining. We need to start talking about the R. I think everybody knows what the O is that we're going after. What's the R? So how can we theoretically stand in front of the mirror and look at ourselves and say, okay, here's the S, and it's okay. This is where the empathy and the compassion happens for ourselves, is in the S. And then when we're comfortable with the S, now it's time to start working on the R. for the O that we want. I want joy and happiness and success in
Yeah.
my life. Okay, that's different. How you define joy and happiness and success is different for everybody. So, what is your R? Self leadership is in the R.
Yeah. I think something that you said about is it hard? Yes, it is hard work, but energetically, we actually use the same units of energy to suppress things that we don't want to look at
Mm-hmm.
and focus outwardly and blame other people. It's the same amount of energy that we use to heal, but it is so much more freeing. So one is going to give us better results. It's the same amount of work. It just is not as comfortable looking in the mirror than it is pointing to someone else. I remember one
Mm-hmm.
of my mentors saying to me very early on that be careful whenever you point your finger because you have three pointing back at you. It's never the thing that you're pointing at that's really,
Mm,
it's whatever's inside of here that's being triggered.
I like that. You get more fingers pointing at you than the one finger that's pointing elsewhere. That's a great picture.
Mm.
So, Antigua, what is it about Antigua that tickled your fancy? You Did you do a lot of journeying through the islands and just decided
No,
on Antigua, or is it the first one you landed on and went, "Oh, this is it"?
it was the first one I landed on for different reasons. Ended up started here, had the list of the 42 islands, but started here, had St. Kitts and Nevis booked, had Barbados
Mm,
booked, and I started this journey in January 2020. So 3 months in, COVID came and changed my
mm,
plan. So I ended up going to Israel for 8 months and then coming back to Antigua to restart the trip. And the second wave of COVID hit, and forces far bigger than me had a plan for me to be here, and it just became home. I'm very, very grateful for it. There's something very healing about the island, and the
mm-hmm.
people are incredibly kind and incredibly gentle. So it's a beautiful place.
So you have a lot of tennis courts.
A fair amount. We just make the tennis courts work. We're a growing community, so we just take turns. But it's good. It's a. I mean, having lived in LA where take cars everywhere, it's a much healthier lifestyle,
Hmm.
much more. It isn't. It hasn't got that rat race. I notice that very clearly now when I go back to the States. And there's also things that I miss about America and the UK, that so that the best of all worlds come together, because we're only 3 hours from Miami here and 4 hours from New York, so easy to get to.
Yeah, and jumping off spot, if you will, and then go across the pond, as they say, back to the UK. How often do you get back to the UK?
Not too often, maybe a couple of times a year, seems at the moment, but it's good.
All four daughters still in the US. I know one's still in the US.
I've got three of them are in the US, one is in Europe. They all have decided to live in different states, so it means lots of traveling to different places, which is nice. But they're doing good, thank God.
And how many of them are sort of the adventurous spirit as you are?
I, I think all four of them are in their own way. They've. I'm very proud of how they have created a life. Each one of them is so different, that works for them, and found what makes them happy, and goes for it. All very independent. Well, you've met Talia, so
Yeah.
it's a force to be reckoned with. So
Oh, tell me
strong,
about it.
strong women, but very heart centered.
Oh, very heart centered.
Yeah.
I absolutely love reading her. her posts on LinkedIn and the self leadership journey that she's on right now. I even remarked about that. She
Yes.
recently joined X, which I've been on for many years, and uh, she made some kind of comment, and I replied back to her. I just love watching the self leadership journey that you're on. So, speaking of that, so you had one daughter that came back and said, "What is going on? You are not the same
Mm.
person that you used to be." So your daughters have kind of watched you on your
Yeah.
journey. How many of your daughters would you say sort of watched what you were doing and kind of took that?
I think all of them have gone through some sort of therapy, coaching, mentoring. All of them have. They've chosen different modalities that have
Mm-hmm.
worked for them. I think there's a plethora available to us, and each person and each coach will, even some of the ones that weren't as effective taught me an awful lot. So, and I think as we evolve and develop, you need different people to come in and guide you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a firm believer that we have seasons in life that we're going through different. When you're looking at the whole picture between soul slash spirit, heart, minds type things, that we have different seasons in life and
Mm.
different areas of your life are being worked on um, in those seasons.
Yeah,
And you have
definitely.
different people
Yeah.
that come in and out of your life during those seasons that are teachers, if you
Well,
will, in some respect.
definitely. I mean, I'm really, really good at seeing other people's stuff. I can see it very clearly, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
My own stuff, I can't see to save anything. So I mean, since that night with Tony Robbins, I've been very fortunate to always have coaches and mentors in my life because I know I can't see my own stuff, and I'm committed to, you know, not repeating mistakes that I'm become aware of because I want to live a happier, more fulfilled life.
But I've always looked upon my relationships as my teachers, and in particular, the very close relationships between family, spouse, and so forth kind of hold up mirrors for us with which to look in about ourselves, and therefore act as teachers, so to speak,
100%.
for us in our own life out of the relationships. And I'm sure you probably feel the same way, and it's a big part of your
Yeah,
coaching since you deal mostly with relationships.
I mean, I think it was Esther Hicks. I'm not sure, but if you want to know what you're really thinking about, just look at what is manifesting in your life, and you will know what kind of thoughts are going in there.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think it's As a Man Thinketh, the book there talks about that life is just a looking glass.
Yeah.
If you really want to know what you're thinking, just look at what you're producing. So going back to that outcome thing that you had, the S plus R is O.
Mm-hmm.
Want to know what your response is? Just look at the outcome that you are producing.
Well, it's been an absolute delight to be speaking with you today. Unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close on our vacation. Um, if people wanted to find out more about your retreats and your coaching, or you as a person and those type things, what's the best way they can reach out and engage with you?
The website master the THE 8 is the number 8, and 8 is all about the ebb and flow of life and infinity. So if you can master that, then I think you're halfway there. But that would be the best place to look.
Okay. Now, as I forewarned you, the last question we ask of all of our guests is the question: what do the words "generate your value" mean to you?
So to me, it's taking whatever life has helped me become and pay it forward. That's what it means to me. Because if you have all of that value and you don't share it and use it to uplift others,
Mm-hmm.
then it gets stuck inside of you. And I know that Les Brown talks about the graveyard being like the richest place in the world because so many people die with their their music still inside them.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is really, I don't want to die with my music in me. Let me give it to the people I was meant to touch and impact. That's what the value part means to me.
And that's why when people ask me, Andy, what's your definition of success? I say it's living my why out loud, right? So it's one thing for me to do all the internal work that we talked about in this episode and try to understand what your why is in life. But if you don't live it out loud, meaning that you're sharing, you're being vocal about it and you're sharing that why and doing it every single day, then run a high risk when your life is coming to an end that you're full of regrets because you never did, like you said, that music may have been playing in your heart, but it wasn't playing on a loudspeaker for others to hear and join in with you on that music and so-called dance with you, if you will, in that music that you're creating for yourself because you didn't do it out loud. And that's why I pick those words when I say, people ask me, what does success look for you? For me, it's living my why out loud, meaning I'm sharing it. I'm generating value in other people's lives through talents and skills either was naturally born with or developed over life, or sharing my ideas or opinions or things of that nature that's going to bring value to people's lives. And hence why I picked those words from my company name.
That's beautiful.
All right, Ronita, I can't thank you for taking that valuable time and sharing it with us for the listening audience. I hope you had 3 pieces of paper because our conversation is just full of so many Ronita, we call them golden nuggets here on the podcast that you can take away and integrate into your life or into your business or your leadership, your self-leadership, your self-relationship with yourself type things. And that's why I built this platform and do this every week with my valuable time to be able to share that in hopes that it lands and then you can pick it up, integrate it, and live out your why out loud from that perspective. So we're here every Tuesday with another episode with another great guest like Ronita. We hope that you'll tune in, subscribe, hit that button so you don't miss an episode. We're available on all the podcast platforms as well as YouTube this year. For those that are visually inclined to get more out of the visual as opposed to the audio, we're all built very different. So and if you like what you heard today, share it with others. Tell people about it because I can create that music, so to speak, but if you don't share it, then that music doesn't land on anybody else to hear. And then the value doesn't get created in their lives. So I encourage you to share it with others if you really got some strong meaning out of the conversation that I had with a guest. So that being said, have a great day. Have a great week. Hope to see you here next Tuesday for the next episode right here on the Generate Your Value podcast. Take care.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at _Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.